Thank you. I have an open question, actually, to all the panelists or whoever feels in capacity to respond. This person says that when we are talking about commodities, the cost of production and logistics must be very low. Otherwise, it would be a high-value product. Well, I guess it would not be. There are several initiatives focusing on tariffs and certification, but what is being done on the logistics front? Does any of the speakers have any comments on the IMO, International Marine Organization standards, and their impact on the capacity of ethanol reaching international markets?
Comments
on the International Marine Organization standards and their impact on the capacity of ethanol reaching international markets. Is that something anyone can cover? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, sorry, we will move to another question. I have a question for you, Mrs. Earley, and if you are able to answer that question, I would also like you to develop. Someone's asking if you are aware of the MIT study which President Clinton referenced to yesterday, and if so, if you could give your views on.
The what?
The MIT study.
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well,
that I'm not. But I did agree with him that most of the studies that I've seen indicate that climate change is far more acute and dangerous than we had thought. And I believe that was his point.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
For Per. You are advocating managed trade, yet it seems that that would need to be managed by the same people who have been managing our economies. What makes you think that they can do a better job?
As I said, I'm just so frustrated to see these huge potentials that could be developed in the tropical world, still in Europe, in the United States, and the second generation. It is not being developed because it's like the prisoner's dilemma right now. No one trusts the others. And everyone is crammed into this low blend market, which is the small part of the market, while the high blend market is the one we have to develop in order to reduce oil dependency and in order to really reduce CO2. But we're not doing that because we don't let the most cost efficient, the most CO2 efficient, and the really large volumes be available for that market. So in order to do that, you have to get those people, perhaps not exactly this industry, but perhaps the politicians from these countries, to sit around the table and say, this is just stupid. On one hand, we have the biggest challenge for mankind, that is climate change. On the other hand, a much shorter one, coming much sooner, most likely, the shortage of oil. Both of them are equal as dangerous for the stability of the system. And here is a certain one part of the solution that can contribute very significantly to this. We don't develop that potential because we have this gridlock of trade where everyone is the loser, because we have had this discussion for 15 years that Europeans are sending TV teams to Brazil and they all go up to Northeast and they show the worst cases where you have, slavery conditions and so on, and they show this on the televisions in Europe and they said this is bad, this is what you really support if you buy Brazilian ethanol and so on. And then you have TV teams going to US and look at the corn ethanol using coal in the worst cases, and they all try to show how bad the others are. Instead of, we all know that almost in all cases, I know there are some exemptions, it's always better than gasoline and diesel. And certainly is always better than the alternative, that is liquefied coal or tar sand, because that what you will see if you're not successful to develop this. And it's just a waste, just because we are in this kind of prisoner's dilemma where we don't trust each other. Get these people, perhaps shift the people then around the table. And that's what I said, the politicians from Europe, from US, from Brazil, should get around the table and said, if, for example, if President Obama now wants really to develop flexifuel, E85, you cannot do that only on corn ethanol. On the other hand, if you say, give the low blend market to the American producers, and then you open up that much bigger market for free trade, that could give a tremendous boost to the investments in Brazil and the rest of the tropical world. But someone has to change the rule of the game. And if we just continue, we are losing time.
Do you think there's a venue that is appropriate for that kind of discussion?
Well, I think there's a dinner tomorrow between Bob Deneen and Marcus Jank and Rolf Verhoot from eBio. And if the industry from Europe and Brazil and US can see the self-interest of breaking such a kind of agreement, the politicians would have it quite easy to do it.
I think we'll have a plenary session tomorrow morning, which will gather members of the Brazilian government, also from UNICA and from the eBio and also from the US part. So I'm sure you can put the question at that time. That will be very interesting. But Victor would like to react on this and please.
Yeah, I think Per has been provocative, and I think we didn't discuss enough his proposal, because it's worth thinking about this. I mean, you shouldn't simply discard it. It is an interesting proposal, and I think industry should think about it. Of course, I have a different view, but it doesn't mean that his proposal is not interesting. I think he says something very important. First of all, there are hidden agendas out there. We know what these hidden agendas are, and people are blaming ethanol for all of the evils of the world. I mean, ethanol, which is, I think, people who look at it in a non-ideological way see that it is an environmentally friendly product. Because of the hidden agendas out there, it's being portrayed in Europe, and it's amazing. I mean, Per is right. I mean, you watch European television, and they show the horrible things. I mean, the Amazon forest being destroyed and burnt because of ethanol, which is completely wrong. But so there's a work to be done, as I told a friend of mine who is an ethanol producer. Don't get mad, get to work. That's what you have to do. Don't get mad with Europeans. Get to work, go to Europe, and try to dispel these misinformation campaign that is going there on there because of hidden agenda. So that's one issue. Now, talking about trade. The trade issue is, of course, something that the lobbies of corn producers and ethanol producers in the US, in Europe, are very much against the reduction of tariffs. Will they agree to reduce tariffs?
No, I'm saying maintain the tariffs on the low blend market, but open up the big market. Then all will have a market for themselves. And then you don't have that resistance from very strong interest groups and lobby groups. Yeah. Because the alternative, just have free trade. That would mean going to Europe and going to US, say, hey, exit from the market. Shut down all the factories, because that's what will happen. And that's not realistic. That won't happen.
Yeah.
And we don't have time to do that. So that's my proposal. For 10 to 15 years, have a managed trade issue. In 10 years, the price of oil will be so high, so it's a room for everyone to sell. Then you have a different situation, because right now the cost of oil in Saudi Arabia, $15, $20 a barrel at maximum. But as long as the market price is $60 a barrel, it's fine for those that have a cost of $40, $50. But now when the cost is so, pushed down, those marginal high-cost producers don't have a role to play in the market. But in 10 to 15 years, there is a room for everyone. And then you can get rid of that kind of temporary managed trade issue. Yeah. But in the intermediate time, you need that kind of solution. Otherwise, we'll meet here a year again, or 2 years and 3 years, and we have these discussions, and everyone is crammed into the low blend market, and you don't develop the big potentials. That's the hybrid. So I agree with you ideologically, but from a pragmatic point of view, I don't think it's realistic to just go for free trade in the short term.
Yeah, very briefly. I mean, I understand his point of view. Of course, I do think that managed trade, we have seen examples of managed trade in the past. We have seen managed trade in cars. We have seen managed trade in textiles for so many years. Once you get into that trend, it will go on for decades. It creates distortions that are just, very, very difficult to overcome.
The difference here is by nature, you have the natural laws are driving demand for renewable energy. And that hasn't kicked in yet. When that really kicks in, you don't have to have these managed trade issues, because then you have a shortage of biofuels in all scenarios. But today, we have put ourselves in a situation where you have too much biofuels and everyone is suffering. That's the difference.
Well, I think we can all agree at least that your proposal has the merit of provoking a debate, and I'm sure that will feed in perfectly for tomorrow's plenary session. I would like to thank you very much for your contribution, for your presentation, very interesting, and for answering those questions.